Good morning and welcome to Trends in the Papers on 98.3 Mainland FM. Yes, it's time for us to look through the trending stories on the front pages of our dailies. And my name still remains Omobola Sandra. Today, I will be doing some sort of collaboration with Sage Babalola. She's here with me in the studio. Good morning, Sage.
Good morning, Sandra. Good morning to you.
Good morning. All right, so let's just get into it. Fuhad Sahid should also be joining in via the phone line any moment from now. But it's been quite an interesting ride so far in the year. I mean, a lot, especially on the political scene, a lot has been happening. But then, majorly across the papers this morning is still the economic woes that we seem to be experiencing in Nigeria as a whole. And it's becoming a serious cause for concern. And one would think that are these presidential candidates, all these presidential candidates, are they truly ready for what is to come when or if any of them actually assumes office come May 29, 2023? We will know when the time comes. Good morning, Fuad.
Yeah, good morning, Sandra. How are you?
I'm well, thank you very much. Say hello to Sage.
Good morning, Sage. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Good morning to you.
All right. So let's just get into it. I have the papers here with me, The Guardian, The Punch, Vanguard, and of course, The Nation newspaper. And I will start off with The Guardian newspaper. And the major headline here is Debt Servicing Gulf's 80.6% of 2022 revenue. Federal government seeks fresh 8.8 trillion naira loans. All right. And, well, the riders to that, I'll just quickly take that. Lawmakers severance others to cost 228.1 billion naira. And we also have federal government to fund 553.46 billion naira budget gap with spectrum fees and maritime tax. Security to Gulf 13.4% of total expenditure outlay. Education allocation raised from 5.4% to 8.2%. Only 1.88 billion naira released for capital projects as at November. Government not doing enough to generate income. So in all of this, that's basically what I wanted to say. At the end of everything, we seem to have so many plans in place. We seem to have so many good projections, good plans, and all of that. But how are we supposed to fund all of this? Okay, yesterday we had the conversation as regards the president signing into law the budget, and what we have now is for 11 months, that's January to November of last year, the federal government actually spent over 5 trillion naira servicing its debt obligation to different local as well as foreign institutions and individuals. So as we are now looking forward to accumulating a fresh 8.8 trillion naira debt from domestic and international market, I don't know what exactly the incoming president is supposed to look forward to as regards the fiscal, monetary and economic policies of Nigeria. But what are your thoughts, Fuad?
Well, if I'm to take your last word, what the incoming president is to meet in terms of our financial situation as a country. It's a very simple thing. If you want, I think one of the writers you read, I would want to disagree with it a bit. The fact that we are not generating enough. Yes, we may not be generating enough.
No. They said the government is not doing enough to generate income.
Yeah, okay.
So there's a lot that you can do, but they are not doing enough to make the money.
Okay, all
yes.
Right. I agree completely with that. But even the little one that we are generating, how are we spending it? What are the expenditure patterns? The cost of governance, the things we spend the money on, and all of that. The reality is just that for the next president, like you asked, he or she, should be ready to face a very tough time. The monies are not available. That's why you see that they are looking for money everywhere. They talked about maritime tax. They are looking at telecom tax. We can even do all of this taxing, but the question is, how do we spend the money? Most of the squeeze in the system, the level of corruption that we have, the fact that we still have public servants having access to hundreds of billion naira. You understand? So it just goes to tell you that even if we generate all the monies in the world and we are still this open to corruption, we still have this high cost of governance where legislators are taking all these jumbo pay and allowances for doing practically nothing. We can still be the same story. So it has to be about, number one, generating enough, but also looking at the cost of governance and the things we spend money on. We should have a complete balance in that area. It should be about things that really touch the lives of ordinary Nigerians. It's things that will transform their lives, not just feeding people that have already fed part of the nation. You know, so the reality is that we are in trouble financially, fiscally, and monetarily as a country. The books are not balancing. If you have a country, for example, just how many months we're servicing a debt of over 5 trillion naira, and we are looking to borrow under 8 trillion. So it's as good as we are borrowing to pay debt. So you want to pay gbese, you borrow to pay another gbese. So what kind of financial situation is that? You are borrowing, you are using to pay another debt. You know, so again, like I said yesterday, and I think Nigerians should brace up. They should be ready for tough times in 2023, because I suspect that, you know, because the government needs money desperately, they are going to go after everything and anything, taxing, raising levies, and of course, it's going to go back directly on the ordinary people. But they should be ready for some of these tough decisions that will come from government.
All right, thank you very much. But what about, you know, cost of governance? I mean, I'm looking at here, lawmakers' severance, you know, their severance pay others to cost over 200 billion naira. I'm also looking at that. I mean, isn't it something that maybe should be explored? Cutting cost of governance.
That's just severance allowance, so not their actual pay.
Exactly.
So those ones, if you have to go deep into that too, and then some of the kind of projects, you know, so what I call white elephant projects that are, you know, deliberately, initiated to get money, you know. So some of these things also have to be looked at. And people are even suggested, but that would be very, very difficult, very, very realistic. Also have a unicameral legislature. Why do you have two chambers? The Senate and House of Reps. Why can't we just collapse it into one? In fact, the extreme suggestion for that is that for us to even have them as part-time legislators. They just come and we pay them for sitting allowance. We don't need to keep them there all through the year. So there are days for sitting, and we pay them for the hours they sit, and you know. And I'm sure there are even Nigerians of substance that are ready to even do the job free. Yes, I would say yes. You know, we can do this thing free. We can, you know, why not? If not, but like I said, these are the extreme situations and extreme suggestions that we have. But at least the one we have now, we can continue to critically look at the cost of governance and bring it down heavily. And then the most important one is that block all leakages that are open to corruption. The oil sector needs complete reforms. We should be able to earn enough from the oil sector, but what are we doing now? Even our crude oil exploration, the only one we can account for is less than 50%. Others we can't even account for how much we are making from crude sales. Subsidy is still a major problem. NNPC needs a complete life. Like Showore said, I keep referring to that in his interview. He said that the transformation of NNPC to NNPCL will not sort anything, because like somebody said, you can't transform the devil. You will always get the devil.
All right, thank you very much. But that is as regards, you know, debt servicing, taking about over 80% of the 2022 revenue, over 20% of 80% of the money that we actually made in 2022. That's very unfortunate. If all of the money that we are making, we are using it to pay off debt. But then more details of this particular one. It's a long read, especially for economic experts. Get the details on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. We also have here on the front page of Guardian, petroleum tanker drivers are threatening nationwide strike. That is on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper. So the petroleum tanker drivers branch of the National Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers have threatened a strike action over what it described as illegal activities and high-handedness of security agents, particularly the military task force that's operating in the Port Harcourt zone of the union. All right, and they're saying that, or alleging now, that men of the task force burnt 2 trucks conveying HPFO, otherwise known as black oil, on Tuesday after the truck drivers were falsely accused of transporting crude oil. So I have a lot of questions. You know, the task force, they don't know the difference between crude oil and black oil, or why go in as far as burning trucks that you allege is carrying crude. So if it is truly carrying crude, is the solution supposed to be burning and all of that? Then, you know, what consequences would a strike now of petroleum tanker drivers have on the country, especially now that we are still, trying to grapple with the effect of petrol scarcity across the country?
You know that we somehow in our psyche we have been heavily militarized. So everything we think it should be about protest, about strike, about fights. We are not really process driven. It's not really in our culture. You just mentioned, for example, the security forces, security agents, the task force. If you suspect that a tanker is carrying something it should not be carrying, why not arrest and prosecute? You remember that was the same thing that happened with the vessel that was burned, that was said to be carrying illegal crude oil from
and
we asked, why do you have to burn evidence? What is supposed to be the evidence?
And another thing I just want, sorry to cut you, another thing I also want to bring in, I mean, without any form of investigation, by probably reaching out to the refinery where the driver said they lifted the oil, the decision was just to burn the truck. That's the allegation that we're getting now. So I don't know. I have a lot of questions. But then the petrol tanker drivers are saying enough is enough about the high-handedness of security agents. They should stop demonizing the union and also stop persecuting their men who are doing their normal businesses. Well, that's another aspect. Thank you for even reminding me of the burning of those oil vessels also, that we had that conversation some months ago. I mean, you're supposed to be, checking oil theft, and then some people allegedly store oil, and the oil, expensive oil that's supposed to bring money for the country, then you go ahead and then burn it all. That's interesting.
And we didn't see anybody arrested.
No, till now we've not got.
And even the evidence, you burnt it. So sometimes you ask yourself the ways some of our security operatives do their job, and you just want to shake your head and wonder what goes on in their minds when they do some of these things. And then I agree with the tanker drivers. Of course, nobody wants to do legitimate business and get harassed every now and then. But again, we also have to appeal to them that, look, you can always, the fact that they are even in the newspaper is enough to call to caution some of these security agents, overzealous security agents. But again, the idea of strike is not always a solution. You can write a petition, you can do a press conference, make people know your plight, and I'm sure that would be enough to caution the security agents. Because again, the idea of strike would just bring on to ownership to other Nigerians who are not even part of these people. But I understand that sometimes you can get completely frustrated with the way some of our security officers behave and when I carry their duty. But again, it's just one of those things that we keep talking about. We need some form of complete reorientation and reform in this country.
Okay, let's move on now. We also have here now, Nigeria has recorded 35 fresh COVID cases. And that is where we are now. I don't know, maybe that's what we've been waiting for. Maybe now that we have seen it, we'll move ahead with we'll take action. But what we have now is the NCDC has posted 35 new cases for the last week of December, and they stated this on their website yesterday. And they said 22 were recorded in the FCT, 10 in Lagos, 2 in Delta, while 1 in the Plateau. And the infections were recorded between December 24th and 30th. All right. And so what we have now is the NCDC is still stressing that vaccines remain one of the best tools to combat the disease, even as they're still encouraging Nigerians to get vaccinated. So there's still nothing, as regards travelers from China. So that more details of that, a very short story on page 4 of the Guardian newspaper. I also have here, Mbaka's return excites Enugu faithful. It's all right. So Father Mbaka, Mbaka, I don't know, someone should please
controversial Father
yes
Mbaka.
Very controversial Father Mbaka has come back, let me put it that way. So there was excitement as the spiritual director of Amen Adoration Ministries Enugu, Reverend Father Ejike Mbaka, returned to the state. Remember that he left the ministries in October last year when he was transferred to a monastery in Benin City by the Catholic Church. All right, and that transfer also brought in, it raised a lot of dust. There were all his faithfuls, stormed his church, and they wanted to do some sort of protest or so for as regards his transfer. But then he, put out a statement saying no. Let everything be calm. He will respect authorities and whatnot. But now, the church is reopened, and despite the fact that the Catholic Church banned activities in his church, but then the church is reopened and Father Mbaka is back to his church. So we should be hearing, from him as regards, especially in this election season, anytime soon. More details on page 7 of the Guardian newspaper. Now we also have on the front page of the Guardian, disruption in flight operations as ground handler collides with aircraft in Lagos. And that's on page 6. That's I hope everything will do is okay. But what we have is that domestic flight operations were temporarily disrupted in Lagos when a ground handling equipment collided with a boarding aircraft at the MMA airport, at the MMA in Lagos. So it was learned that the ground handling stairs equipment, belonging to a particular airline operator collided with a particular airline operator aircraft, and it disrupted scheduled flights on the busy morning belt. Well, more details on page 6 of the Guardian. You can get there. There's a hint of the impact damaging the elevator of Airbus A320 of Air Peace. Get updates on that one. That's on page 6. All right, and that's all that I have from the Guardian newspaper. Over to you, Sage.
Yes, thank you very much, Sandra. So we're looking at the Punch newspaper. The major story here: Discos hike electricity tariffs secretly, consumers kick. This is in page 20 of the Punch newspaper. So we do have information here that the Discos, that's the distribution companies, have secretly hiked the price of electricity tariff. As you know, I think in March of 2020, the federal government, that's the Minister for Finance, Zainab Ahmed, she did mention that a subsidy on electricity had been removed secretly last year. Of course, there was a lot of protest, but they said that they removed it secretly because they were trying to avoid kickback from the people. Well, it would seem that another secret removal has happened, but this time around is by the distribution companies. From 66 naira per unit is now, I think, 72.2 naira per unit. And of course, you can imagine what has happened now that people have realized it. Some have described this as pure robbery. That's what they're calling it. So I just want us to talk about whether or not these removals are necessary. We're still going to talk about the subsidy removal, because there are stories here in the papers that also address the subsidy removal at the middle of this year. So secret removals, do you think that is safer, and it would definitely prevent kickback from the people if they remove it and then announce later, or people should be carried along from the very beginning? Plus, is this removal essential, especially now that we are looking for money? Let me just put it like that.
Well, why make it secret if it's something that is reasonable? When you do something secret, it means that you know that it's not reasonable. You understand? And a personal experience says, the reality is that a lot of times, when I don't do it myself, I give my wife money. Okay, we need to recharge, electricity and all of that. And what she tells me that the unit you are buying with 5,000, that's reduced. You just keep discovering that the number of units you buy for the same amount keeps reducing. And if it is done secretly, we don't even know. We don't know the frequency. We don't even know whether it's done every month. And that's the thing about the discos that people are saying. They keep doing some of these things, and that is why we keep asking. When they say they remove some electricity tariff, for example, it is only people that it is other people that see these things. Now imagine that they now add removal of subsidy on fuel to that one this year again. Imagine how Nigerians will be able to. Do you think Nigerians will be able to cope with that hardship that will come before the removal? So the fact that they are doing it secretly means that they know it's not reasonable. So the idea of they are expecting a kickback or people are going to protest, it's not because they know it's not reasonable. That is why they are doing it secretly. But for people who used to pay meter, for me it makes a whole lot of sense. Because at least you know that you recharge. They don't give you power, you don't pay anything. It's only people that have this estimated bill that I teach. because those ones, whether you have power or not, you will still be billed at the end of the month, and that's the problem.
All right.
But the fact that they are doing it secretly means that they know it's not reasonable, and it's hardship on other Nigerians.
All right, thank you very much, Fuad. Hopefully, they're able to bridge the metering gap, because I know there's been many conversations about bridging the metering gap and supplying enough meters. They had this initiative of giving out free meters. We don't know how much progress.
People are paying for meters. There are no free meters.
Well, they announced that they will give it out for free.
They announced that's the reality.
No, maybe it's Fabu. No. But they did announce that they will give out free meters. I haven't seen anybody that has said, "Oh, I got my meter free." I haven't seen. Maybe if you got, when we open the phone lines, you can tell us if you were one of the beneficiaries. So let's go to page. Yes. They can tell us now. Maybe we just don't know. So let's go to page 2. This is regarding the elections and INEC's efforts to make sure the forthcoming election is as seamless as possible. INEC sets aside 8,809 beavers as backup. As you know, of course, they're trying to use technology to make sure we can minimize election fraud this forthcoming election. And INEC seems to be really, really prepared. And they're saying that there's about 8,809 beavers available as backup. So we don't want to hear stories that, oh, the beavers that we put in this center was not functioning. Don't worry, we have contingency plans and what have you. So the National Commissioner and Chairman, Information and Voter Education Committee, Festus Okoye, has said that they would deploy to over 406 centers. Rather, they will deploy 176,000 of this system to the registration areas all over Nigeria. So let's talk about INEC's effort first of all. As you know, when you try to use technology or incorporate technology into a system like this one, it might not go 100%, but can we appreciate INEC's effort? Can we also appreciate the fact that they're trying to cover up for mistakes that may happen, and the way they're working, with their contingency plans? We don't want any excuse. We've seen into the future in case anything goes wrong. There's something to make up for whatever mistakes or mishaps might happen. Let's talk about INEC's effort and maybe even appreciate how much effort they're putting into making sure mistakes don't happen during the election.
Yeah, I think we have no choice. I've always said that we just have to continue to support and encourage INEC. We can't do that. So we are still the electoral umpire. And whatever they do could make or mar the elections this year. So I think we just have to continue to encourage and support them, criticize them when it is necessary. But I like the fact that they are thinking ahead. I think Sandra remembers, and they were even talking about black spots, already talking to the telecom operators. To ensure that they cancel out all black spots, ensure that beavers work seamlessly. I'm sure they have also taken note of some of the issues that came up with beavers at the elections in Osun and Ekiti. And I think that's why they are making some of these contingency plans, getting ready for everything that could happen and make sure that we have seamless elections. Beavers have come to stay, Sage. No matter what everybody says, Beavers has come to stay. We'll use it, we'll get better with it. I'm not saying it's going to be 100% like you said. We're going to have one or two glitches here and there, but we will continue to improve. That's how things evolve and get better. So we have to continue to commend INEC, encourage them, and then by the grace of God, we have a fantastic election this year.
Hopefully. They've dealt with the logistics issues as well. They say that they've put airport hubs in Lagos, Port Harcourt, Kano, so it's not like, there was traffic, that's why we not deliver the beavers. They've created airport hubs specially for the delivery of the beavers to all of these centers. So let's just see, maybe the outcome will be commensurate with the effort of INEC during and after the election. So let's talk a little bit about the economy. Well, Nigeria's debt to hit 77 trillion naira as loan servicing would gulp 5.2 trillion naira. That's what we're hearing. So the Nigeria public debt burden may hit 77 trillion naira if the National Assembly approves the request by the President, Major General Muhammadu Buhari, to restructure the ways and means advances. So, of course, the President has decided to assent the appropriation bill, and everything looks good. Although there are many questions to ask the figures. We don't know where they're going to get the money to fund most of the things that they have signed. Let's wait for more information regarding that. But we're being told here that if the Assembly decides to allow the president to restructure the Ways and Loans Means, or put forward his idea or assent to his idea of restructuring the Ways and Loans Means, debt is going to increase from 70 trillion naira, which was I think announced in September of last year, to 77 trillion naira, and of that money, about 5.2 trillion naira would be used to service debt. And unfortunately, all of the things we're borrowing money for, we're not going to get any return on it. Our revenue generation capacity is dwindling, so our debt profile continues to increase, and from everything we're seeing, we're not sure that at the end of the day what we use this money for would generate enough revenue for us to pay back the debt, so we won't spend the majority of it servicing said loan. So don't you think that we keep shooting ourselves in the foot, borrowing money to service debt? So your debt is increasing and you're using the majority to service these debts. What do we need to do to minimize borrowing? And also, like I said, are we not shooting ourselves in the foot? Isn't there a need for some sort of review of our financials in the country? Have a look at how we're using money, the cash flow, how it's moving through the system. Are we borrowing and using it for wise things? Are we making the right decisions with regards to the monies that we continue to borrow, causing our debt profile to increase significantly?
Well, Sage, I think we already had the discussion this morning on this. But the reality is just that we are not spending wisely. We are not making enough, even though we have the capacity to make enough for ourselves. But even the little that we are making, we are not spending it wisely. We are running a government that is too large, it's too expensive. There's too much wastages in the system. The corruption is neck breaking. Every day we review the papers and it's one story of corruption or the other. And these are not corruption that goes in millions. Now we talk of billions. So you can't have such a system and expect a country to be solvent. There's no way that's going to happen. So, for example, the oil sector is in complete mess. There are no data. The queues are still there. The queues are still there as I speak. Sandra, in the last 1-2 weeks, I've been buying fuel at 250 naira per liter.
Yes,
and nobody's giving me any reasonable explanation for it. I think that yesterday. For 250 naira per liter, nobody's giving any explanation. There's a criminal silence on the NNPC between Moman, Newpen, Hitman. They are tossing Nigerians around. We don't even know the clear situation of things. And nobody saying anything to us. We don't know our daily consumption as far as fuel is concerned. Subsidy keeps going up. The expansion of crude oil, we can't even meet 1 million. We have 2.5 million barrels per day allocation from OPEC. We can't even meet half of it. We are struggling to do 1 million barrels per day. And then upon that, you have theft going on. Clear theft going on everywhere and anywhere. So, you say you can figure the 20, there are too many figures to contend with in the papers. But the reality, if you want to put it into simple grammar, Nigeria is bankrupt. We are only managing to survive, because if you have to continue to borrow to fund another good thing, it's as good as you are bankrupt. People are saying this.
All right, thank you very much. Let's look at this one here, and then so that we can check the Vanguard newspaper. So still in Punch, we do have information here. 2.7 trillion naira security budget is low, says Rep panel. The chairman of the House of Representatives Committee on Defense, Babajimi Benson, has said that the 2.74 trillion naira budgeted for security in the 2023 Appropriation Act is inadequate. So now there are many conversations regarding the allocations to different sectors as seen in the Appropriation Act that was just signed by the President. Babajimi Benson seems to think that 2.4 trillion naira for security is inadequate. There's a lot of things that need to be put in place, especially now that we're trying to deploy technology. As we read in the papers, the President has allowed that certain technological should I say systems are deployed to the southeast to help them fight insecurity. This will cost a lot of money, and I'm certain that most of these things will be imported, because we don't have the facility to make these things here. So we would pay for the importation, we'll pay for the materials themselves and what have you. 2.47 trillion naira is set to be inadequate to really fight security. Do you think that there needs to be a review of the amount of money that is sent, or that should I say that is budgeted for security? And what sectors are we looking, should actually get the lion's share? Security, what are the sectors? And like I asked initially, is this money enough, or do you think is wastages that makes it seem like this money is not adequate to deal with our security problems?
Well, see, until I have a complete budget performance index of what we did last year, I can't say whether it is enough or not. It would be nice for us to have a budget performance index of what was voted for the security sector last year, to know whether, okay, this amount was budgeted, this was how we spent it, this was what we achieved, or we overshot it, or no, we didn't spend up to that. Until I have that information, I can't agree with the honorable who is saying the amount is not enough. And the reality is that even the sector is not free from corruption. In the past, we've seen military chiefs, we've seen security personnel being accused of different kinds of corruption. You know, so it should be wrong for me to sit back and say it's not enough, or we are going to buy this and buy that. And the budget performance, let us even see what has happened in the last 5 years in terms of budget performance index of that particular sector, the ministry that he's talking about. The reality is that we should spend more money, for example, on the education sector. That sector is in a complete mess.
And the health sector.
Both are university, even with that sector, the health sector too. Nigerians are dying of ailments that ordinarily we should be able to handle in our hospital. And then for those that even go into some of these big issues, hospital, you pay through your neck to get the best health services in the country. So I agree that we need to spend money on security, but let us know what happened to the ones we spent in the past. The budget performance index is important for me. We don't have those information, and so it would be wrong for me to agree with the honorable whether it's enough or not.
All right, more information on page 11 of the Punch. So, 4 marketers boycott private depots. It's here, page 20 of the Punch as well. We were talking about the increase in the price of fuel. Petroleum marketers, IPMAN particularly, are saying that they're deciding not to patronize private depots anymore because it turns out that these depots are actually creating artificial scarcity. They would buy at the regulated price, 148 naira per litre, and then you see them selling at exorbitant prices. So as much as we want to heap the majority of the blame on the NNPC, of course they have their inadequacies, no doubt, but then it would seem like private depots are not exactly 100% innocent in the increase in the cost of PMS that we're seeing right now. So the marketers are saying that we're just going to boycott these private depots. We're not going to do business with them anymore, because why would you buy at the regulated price and then you start to distribute? And of course it would affect the pump price at the end of the day, because when these retailers get it at the exorbitant price, they would also want to make their money. Nobody is in business for charity. It's not a charity organization, and at the end of the day, we the consumers are the ones that are at the suffering end of all of this. So what do we say very briefly about this private depots, and of course the decision of the fuel marketers to just remove them from the equation altogether?
Well, the question is a very simple question. Why is it that NNPC depots don't have this product and the private depots have it? If NNPC is the sole importer, you understand? You see the conspiracy. The person that is importing his own depots don't have it, but the private depots have it. And then they create the artificial scarcity and sell at a exorbitant price when they buy the regulated price. And then the regulatory agencies in NNPC, what is their job? The PPRs of this world and all of those people are supposed to go around. Because if, for example, filling stations are selling at exorbitant prices, say, or at unofficial prices, they go around and steal filling stations. I think sometime last week, Sandra, we had information that they didn't be going around to those private depots to check.
Yes.
Have they go around? Is anybody going there to steal them? Yes.
I thought they had shut them down anyways. I don't know why they're saying
that. I said these people are just playing with us. Between IPMAN, MOMAN, private depot, NNPC, there's a game going on. There's a game. Because you know there's a way you just get people confused and then you don't even know who to blame. But the reality is that I will still put it back at NNPC, and the Minister of Petroleum incidentally is the president.
With the silence that we're getting from the federal government.
The silence is criminal, Sandra. It's criminal. This has been going on for almost 2 months now, and nobody's telling us anything. It's just blame games we are getting.
Let's move on now to the Nation newspaper. Thank you very much. All right. Now it still trends in the papers on 98.3 Mainland FM. We're looking through trending stories on the front pages of our dailies. Now, the Nation, the major headline there says Tinubu, Shettima, APC chiefs shut down Kano. So Kano APC rally yesterday was amazing and interesting, let me use that word, but then I mean it was something that was supposedly expected. One would think that Kano will be locked down for NNPP Alhaji Rabiu Kwankwaso, so but then I mean with the massive crowd that we saw, well, that's a lot to take away from. But then with this particular headline we have here, ex-Lagos governor promises to serve Nigerians, progressive governors will deliver at poll, says Bagudu, and that's on pages 4 and 5 of the Nation newspaper. What says you, Fuad, as regards the APC, yes, the APC rally in Kano yesterday?
Well, the level of political awareness in the north and the amount of energy and time they give to things like political rallies, one would expect that Kano, being one of the most popular states in the country, was going to have that kind of, big populated rally. Was jam-packed. I was at a stage, I was like, hey, security concerns for these people, when there was going to be, God forbid, if there was a pandemonium or something, people were going to run over each other, because the whole place was jam-packed. But like I said, those are parts of the country where the level of awareness is so high, and they dedicate a lot of energy and time to things like political rally. It was a good outing for the APC, no doubt. It was a good outing. I think the APC supporters are all over social media, flaunting the pictures of how heavy the rally was and the videos and all of that. So it was a good outing for them. But the thing is this, like we always said, I've learned something about rallies. Don't be surprised that half of the people that you saw in that rally yesterday, if there's a PDP rally in Kano State, they will be there too. For different kind of things, maybe for little peanuts and all of those kind of things. And friends, Rabiu Kwankwaso of the NNPP too, owns a rally in Kano. You may see that same size of crowd too. So I remember Mr. Curtis will always say that, look, those crowds at rallies translate to votes. Sometimes not every time. You understand, Sandra? But I have to say that it was a good showing for the APC in Kano yesterday, and good luck to them.
Well, I like that part. I mean, do crowds at rallies translate to vote? That's a very valid question to ask, the Nigerian electorate. But moving on, more details of that on pages 4 and 5 of the Nation. We also have on the front page of the Nation, EFCC secures 3,785 convictions. That's on page 3. Nupeng threatens strike. That's on page 7. Mosque, 6 shops raised in clash among resident settlers in Ondo State. So what exactly transpired? Let's get more details here on page 3. So what we have is that a mosque and 6 shops have been raised in Ogwese community in Akure North local government, and the perpetrators were linked to Tuesday's fight between a Fulani youth and a Hausa, which resulted in the death of one of them. So witnesses said the matter was resolved after a little fracas, and the body was released for burial. But at midnight, the mosque and the 6 shops belonging to the Hausa were set ablaze. So the matter was between the Hausa and the Fulani in that particular Akure North local government, and they stabbed each other and one died. So that's the situation now. So it's a problem of between a Fulani man living in the forest and a Hausa man living in the community over cannabis. They were fighting over cannabis. I don't know. They were fighting over cannabis sativa. Let's use more colorful words,
Okay, well, they high. Right.
So but that's the issue. That's what they were fighting over, right? And that's what caused the fight. One of them died, and then there was I'm seeing that probably there was some sort of retaliation as people closed their shops, and then people came in and then burnt mosques and shops and all of that. So that's what happened in Akure North local government. I just want to ask one question. I thought, or the impression that Ondo State had been given since the unfortunate incident last year, April or June or thereabout, was that Amotekun was supposed to be gaining some sort of grounds as regards security architecture in the state.
But this is supposed to be like a community. One would think that it should be more of the police coming in to ensure that things like this don't happen. You know, and then you want to question this urge by Nigerians to just burn and destroy things. I don't know where that mentality has suddenly come from, where we are just quick to burn houses, burn everything. You know, anything little thing that opposes disagreement that is supposed to be resolved amicably. The next thing is that you have retaliations, and then things are being burnt, houses are being raised. You know, and all of those things. And again, I think in those states, remember sometime last year, the governor also cautioned the Hausa Fulani community against harboring criminals and you know, people that are going to cause chaos in the state. I think the governor has to step up, look at some of these, you know, Hausa community Fulani. Yes, not to profile them, not to profiling now, but ensure that they don't harbor criminals that become a problem to communities, you know, in those states. But honestly, I think Nigerians, we should begin to talk to ourselves. This idea of burning down things, raising houses, you know, there will always be disagreements when people come together.
Just to put something out there, no matter how aggrieved or how, you know, bad or hurt you how hurt you feel, the truth is the fact of the fact is that arson still remains a crime. More details of that on page 3 of the Nation newspaper, running very quickly now. We also have here Wike confident of victory for his preferred presidential candidate, and he has expressed is yet to be named preferred presidential candidate. All right, so we're still awaiting it. I mean, today is 5th of January, so whether or not the announcement.
I'm sure that story has no reliable source.
I've moved from the story. I'm now going on to the fact that the G5 said, or the leader of the G5, Nyesom Wike, said that by January 5th there will be an announcement. Today is 5th of January, by God's grace, and we are waiting.
Tomorrow we'll come again and discuss it.
More details on page 4 of the Nation. Also above the masthead of the Nation, we have Akinjide Oyelese Gbolarunmi in work for Atiku. Yes, that's in Oyo State. They had the Freedom Walk. More details on page 26 of the Nation. We also have here Air Force redeploys branch chiefs and AOCs. That's on page 6. NDDC barred from awarding contracts above limit. Okay. That's on page 28. And finally, from the Nation newspaper, the CBN 1.355 trillion naira Polaris Bank sale is the most competitive offer. That's on page 8. Polaris Bank is up for sale. All right. Well, more details on page 8 of the Nation newspaper. Over to you, Sage, as wrap up with Vanguard newspaper.
Yes, thank you very much, Sandra. So let's run through Vanguard very briefly. The top story here on page 5. We've been borrowing to fund petrol subsidy, says the finance minister. We've been borrowing to fund petrol subsidy. Right as to the story, subsidy unsustainable to engage NAS on securitization of 22.7 trillion ways and means. Awaiting investigation into alleged stamp duty diversion. INEC gets 173 billion naira for election. But let's focus on the top story here. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, has said that the federal government was borrowing money to fund petrol subsidy, insisting that the subsidy regime had become totally unsustainable. Of course, President Muhammadu Buhari's regime had planned to remove subsidy earlier last year, but plans or threats of protests by labor and what have you caused them to have to announce an 18-month extension. Well, the Minister for Finance is saying that we have gotten to the point where we can no longer fund subsidy in the country because we have been borrowing money to do so. Don't you think that maybe this is a decision that should have been taken long ago? Temporary inconveniences for long-term benefits, and the timing, people say the timing is wrong. Is there ever going to be a right time for the removal of subsidy? And now that we have been told there's really nothing that would come out of this, even if the people keep kickback, we do not have the resources to fund subsidy anymore.
See, let's even ask ourselves, like Yoruba speaker Dare Katusha, how did subsidy become this problematic? Like we always said, it's not that subsidy is a problem. It's not that we made it a problem in Nigeria. Subsidy became a problem because we can't even account for daily consumption. We don't even know the exact figures we are dealing with. And so, in all of that, who do we blame? we have regulators, we have people that we've put in charge of these things that are supposed to work on these things. And if we find them incompetent, can't we just remove them and do the right thing? But since we have people in government, we have people in NNPC, we have people in the oil sector, we have people that do all of these things, and they seem to be bigger than the country, and there's nothing we can do about them. So we decided, okay, let subsidy go, because as a country, we don't have the capacity to account for what we bring in, so that we know what exactly we are paying subsidy on. We are that as a country. I'm sorry, I don't want to use the word useless, but we don't have the machinery to do the right thing. Yes, now it's painful, Sandra. So let us remove subsidy. But the reality is that, look, we should ask, because I know this government, they want to do at the last minute. But I think that the answer is just based on they should be ready for the hard times that will come if this government removes subsidy without fixing our refinery.
Thank you very much. Maybe we'll talk about this when we go to mainland, our focus. So very briefly, let's look here. New COVID-19 variant not in Nigeria. Page 9 of the Vanguard has the full story. New COVID-19 variant not in Nigeria, says NCDC. Now, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control and Prevention has said COVID-19 Omicron sublineages, partly responsible for the current increase in cases in China, is not in Nigeria. They are monitoring it, but they say it's not in Nigeria. So do you think that we can say that is why they're not very scared about it?
I knew that was where they were going to go to. Looking at, okay, so that's what they're waiting for until it comes before they take proactive measures, as regards that particular one. But I think we've talked about this, Rad. We also mentioned it earlier this morning when they said that there are new cases, and they're also encouraging people to get vaccinated, but still no proactive measures as regards the new variant from China, whether or not to be tested.
What I was waiting for to hear, this is the measures we put in place.
No, there's no measures.
They say they are monitoring. Like vigilante.
Monitoring spirits.
Yeah, fine.
It's all right. We appreciate them, the fact that they are very concerned to the point of actually monitoring the situation.
Ghana is doing something. Other African countries, Egypt,
Ghana and Morocco. Yeah.
But we have to monitor.
Nothing will happen to us.
Okay. I hear you.
I
think we have moved on with COVID. Really, I think Nigerians are not even interested. I'm sure.
If you check the places or the states where they said they have the new cases, you see that there are states that have either an international airport or like a major local airport. Looking at Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, and the Plateau. Okay.
I would have thought that the new data should have been a bit more specific. Out there, where these people that have this infection,
thank you.
What is their travel history in the last maybe 3 or 4 months? But we don't have that information.
All right. We'll come back to picking one or two.
Open mic today, right?
Yes, it's open mic. There's no focal. Yes, there are no focal points. It's open mic for today. So when we come back by 8:40, we open up the phone line. We'll just run through the major trending stories across all. Pick whichever one you want to, that piqued your interest, and then call in or send a text message or a WhatsApp message, and let's set the conversation rolling. This is 98.3 Mainland FM. We will be right back.